I have a Ph.D. student, Isaiah Wallace, who's about to graduate. So he should be Dr. Wallace in about a month or two here if all goes well. And he's really been thinking hard about this, this particular issue. He initially started out as an electrical engineer and then switched over to computer science and then really sort of fell into this, sort of world of computer science education, although I think he wouldn't call himself in that realm because he really wants to push beyond formal education. Mm-hmm. And so he came up as a street dancer in Philadelphia. So like he was immersed in a community of people where, they had competitions, but they had mentoring structures. It was a real community of practice of people who learned how to engage in dance. And so he's really been trying to think about applying that kind of experience to out of school computer science and sort of computational literacy. Halby survey. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Mm-mm. Okay, so what it is it's been going on forever. It's been going on since the 70s. They survey colleges and universities in North America. So they'll just write to all of the department heads of all computer science, computer engineering departments in Canada and the United States and just be like, tell us about who's graduating, who's getting degrees, who's entering PhD programs, who's leaving PhD programs. And it's kind of depressing to go back and look at the historical data and how things have changed in computer science as a field over 40 years, right? And you see very, very slow but steady progression of women in the field. There's still very much underrepresentation, but there's been slow and steady progress. So at a minimum, you're like, okay, at least I'm seeing growth. I'm seeing change. If you look at Black students who enter PhD programs, Black students who enter master's programs, undergraduate degree programs, it has been flat for pretty much since the 70s. And that just lack of change is super depressing, but I also think sort of super indicative of the way the cultural nature of the field right now as it is. And so Isaiah is really thinking about okay, why aren't we seeing this change and reflecting on his own experience as a Black man in the field of computer science. And he would be actually a really fascinating person if you want to have a really fascinating podcast, to chat with Isaiah about this. But
yeah, happy to.
He's been, kind of thinking about okay, I didn't learn dance in a school. I learned it in sort of in my own cultural context in a sort of almost like an underground community of dancers. And he's saying, well, why can't we have that in computer science? Why can't, he had this term he called street coding. Why can't we have people who are just out on, using code for self-expression, like music or dance or poetry? Why is it? And that if you're not paying attention to culture and processes of enculturation that fall outside of formal academic settings, you're missing the point, right? And this goes back to the literacy thing. I think that there's a certain degree of enculturation that happens for people that parents and children engage in that prepares them for academic degree programs. That's just the way it is. And so his focus is how do we start to imagine sort of underground computing cultures that are for him located in sort of the Black American experience, but I think you could imagine this in lots of different contexts. And how do you encourage and grow that kind of thing that's completely outside of formal school settings? And so he's really thinking about the long game and kind of thinking about computational enculturation.
This excerpt of the CSK8 podcast was from episode 189, which is titled Computational Literacies with Michael Horn. You can listen to this episode as well as hundreds more by simply searching for the CSK8 podcast on your favorite podcast app.